Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome to our spoiler review of Furiosa. This is First Cut, and we're here to break it all down. I'm here with RB3 and Sabrina. We're excited to talk about this movie because it is one of our most anticipated movies of the year. We all finally got a chance to check it out, and I just want to jump right into it with our general thoughts on the film. I'll start with you, RB3. What did you think of Furiosa?
Man, I feel like when it comes to me, it's always a lot of pressure. I don't know where I'm going to land on my opinion, but I will say that I enjoyed this movie. It was really good. I had a good time with it. Gave me everything that you would want. It's some artsy imagery, paintings like in the background, and the imagery. You know, talking spoilers, like Chris Hemsworth growing the tree out of his body. Beautiful artsy stuff. I could see why this was a hit at the Cannes Film Festival. You know, it's a very artistic action movie, and I like that. There's a lot of great scenes. I don't know if the sum of the whole parts really makes for the most satisfying experience, but that's just where I land on it. But again, I only saw it one time. When I saw Mad Max Fury Road, the first time I saw it, I wasn't the hottest on it. You know, I was a little more lukewarm on it too. But over time, I grew to love it and really enjoy it. And maybe that'll be the same case with Furiosa. But for right now, I'm at a very strong good.
All right, Sabrina, what are your thoughts on Furiosa?
So I actually wasn't the biggest Fury Road fan. It's like, I enjoy the film. I know it's incredibly well made, but it's not one that I gravitate towards rewatching over and over again. But it is that kind of cinematic experience that I think is so interesting, because Mad Max and the franchise as a whole is not as popular of an IP as we normally see with like a Star Wars or something so grand and huge in scale. So that's what I find to be very fascinating about this one, is kind of like the quality of the films allow them to have like a slow burn, word of mouth. But I think for Furiosa in particular, I was really, really excited. I know they've been talking about this prequel film for a very long time. George Miller had Fury Road and Furiosa ready for decades. So as a prequel, I think it's genuinely fantastic. I think a lot of the times when we see a prequel film in this scale, there's a little bit left to be desired, but for me, I think we saw so much more of Furiosa as a character, her motivations, her backstory, and I do want to give a shout out to both Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth. I know we'll get into it a little bit more. Anya, I feel like she's always a hit for me. Chris Hemsworth, I was not familiar with his game at all. I think I was really excited to see him flex his muscles when it comes to like his range as an actor. So those were kind of the things that impressed me the most. And like RB3 said, the cinematography, some of these shots were just absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's interesting. For such a action-packed movie, it left me in such a contemplative state, if that makes sense, where I'm lost in thought, I'm lost in digesting the film. Where after I'm enjoying it as I'm watching it, obviously, but as it ends and it concludes with its conclusion, I feel like I'm left just chewing on it as much as I can. And I think that's what I enjoyed the most about it. I really love this film. I do feel like it has some drawbacks, and I understand some people who don't love it as much as Mad Max Fury Road. But for me personally, I just felt like this gave so much more texture, so much more breathing room to the Mad Max universe. And again, Furiosa is an incredible character, as you guys have said already, and I feel like centering on her and centering on her journey made it that much more compelling. How did it compare to Mad Max Fury Road for you, RB3?
Well, to me, there's no comparison. To me, Mad Max Fury Road is definitely a far better film and a far more enjoyable film. At least as I feel, you know, my initial viewing right now. The reason I also feel that is because I love the pacing of Fury Road. I feel like that was a crisp 2 hours. This one was a little longer. This one was 2 hours and 30 minutes, and it's telling like a pretty much, you know how we always mock biopics for telling like a cradle to grave kind of story. That's almost what this is telling. Like it's almost telling like a full lifetime, 18 years of Furiosa's life, right? Which is a lot, and I don't know if it executes it as gracefully as I would have liked it. I definitely think you're right. We definitely get a more fleshed out idea of who Furiosa is as a person. At the same time, I feel like there was so little dialogue. It was kind of hard to get like characterizations without it really feeling like almost like the actors are almost like props in a kind of way. You know what I mean? Like I almost felt like there were, I don't know, you know, it left me a little cold. And again, maybe if I watch it again, I'll get more connected with it. But I had a hard time connecting with these people on a human level. And even in Mad Max Fury Road, you don't really connect with them on a human level, but at least you get a stronger idea of the connection between Max and Furiosa through that movie. And this one, you know, we get Furiosa's connection to her mother, but then the mother dies. And then we get a connection with the boyfriend dude, but then he dies. And then it's like, dang, now we had Vengeance 5, and then we just got a flash montage of a war. I also think maybe that's my biggest nitpick. I think I hate any movie, not hate. I think I like have a little bit of a criticism to any movie that just like war happens and it's just a montage. Dune 2 did that too. It was like,
I was gonna say,
we have a war, and then it's just like 2 seconds of a war montage, and it's like, oh, war's over. What? Like, it happens so fast. So I don't know. I think I'm just nitpicking here, but I think that's why. Again, I think it's a really good movie, and I might come to really like it. I'm shut up.
Sabrina, the comparison between the two, would you prefer Furiosa to Fury Road?
I actually think Furiosa, for somebody like me who didn't have a lot of just like, I don't know, Fury Road didn't have the same impact on me that it had with a lot of people that I speak to. I think it elevates Fury Road. It actually made me want to go back and rewatch it. I haven't done so yet, but maybe now with this like new understanding kind of the world and this character, as amazing as like Charlize was in the film, it's just, I never fully rocked with this world. And now I feel like I understand it on a bigger scale. And I love what RB3 mentioned about like the war. I think the reason why something like that worked for me is because I was so entranced by Furiosa's characterization. And I think like the lack of dialogue, I didn't even feel the runtime, and I didn't feel the lack of dialogue, which is something that I notice a lot in films like this because of a lot of these performances. Anya Taylor-Joy, the way she is like working her screams, her faces, I feel like I gained so much of it, and it really did kind of like I was so engaged with her as a character and as she was growing. I think this one elevates Fury Road for me more, for sure, than if this hadn't come out. I probably wouldn't think about Fury Road that much again, but I feel like I also really want to watch Fury Road in a theater because this was something I missed when it first released, and now I want to go back and see it like with a crowd, see those visuals on screen, because yeah, that's my favorite part about those films. I also love a lot of the characters, even like the brides or like the what are they called? The baby makers. Like the Riley
wives,
Keough.
yeah.
The wives, there we go. I think I love the part of that we got in Furiosa that we get to see play out in Fury Road later on too.
Yeah, what's interesting about this movie is that it has a different story structure than Fury Road obviously did have, where it breaks it up into, I believe, 5 chapters. What did you guys feel about the 5 chapters, kind of like Odyssey, mythology type of storytelling that George Miller decided to take with Furiosa?
I love it personally. I think, especially for a story like this prequel, this revenge story at its core, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like Kill Bill in that way. I just get a lot of vibes from this protagonist who just is very persistent and goes through so much, and is continuing to endure. You know, this is a spoiler chat. It still got me. Like, I knew it was going to come at some point, but the scene where she's hanging by her arm and then she loses her arm and she is still going. Like, she is still continuing versus me at any minor inconvenience. I'm like, all right, I need to lay in bed for at least 24 hours. So I think that is really engaging with her as a character. And when she first kind of snuck her way, almost Mulan-esque, she snuck her way with the men and was kind of hiding her true identity. She went and climbed out on that car situation that was hanging from the hook. And when she was able to do that, like, those moments kind of just kept me on the edge of my seat. And of course, since it is a prequel, we know that everything is going to be okay and we are going to see her later on. So those stakes weren't there, but I still felt it somehow. And I think a lot of that had to do with George Miller's direction with those scenes.
RB3, what'd you think about that?
I enjoyed certain scenes. I think the structure of it was a little bit, it was good. I actually enjoyed the structure. I think the pacing was my thing. And then I know some people online, you know, film Twitter, if you disagree slightly, they call you an idiot, right? So I saw some people calling people idiots in this morning, like for criticizing the pacing. I think it's a valid criticism because we don't see Anya Taylor-Joy until like an hour into the movie, right? For me, like, I think personally, for me, I think I would have been a little bit more enthralled if that whole opening hour was maybe like 30, 40 minutes. You know what I mean? It just moved. And there were some interesting stylistic choices that were different than Mad Max Fury Road. And, you know, some would even argue better. Like, there are a lot more long takes. There are a lot, like, the action sequences are actually bigger in this movie than they were in Fury Road, especially the beginning, I believe, of the third chapter, where we first get introduced to the Anya Taylor-Joy, like, story, Anya Taylor-Joy side of the story. And then it's like the people flying in on the kites and then throwing the stuff and it's crazy stuff. I think all of that stuff is really cool. I think the themes of it that they're approaching, like the leader, the tragic leader, and Chris Hemsworth and his development throughout it too. I thought the scene transitions were really cool. Again, I think like a lot of great parts. I think there's a lot of great parts in it. I'll leave it at that.
Let's. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking actually for the chapter structure, because I could 100% like, I see exactly where you're coming from, RB3, with all of that. And although I'm on the opposite side of it, something that what you said made me think about was the way the story ends and when the narration kicks in and we're kind of talking about almost like the legend of Furiosa. It's like, oh, people talked about what she did with Chris Hemsworth's character. Like, did she shoot him? Did she torture him? All of the above. And I kind of think that chapter structure really highlights her story and how it's kind of like spread across to us as an audience and then also to the people in this universe.
Yeah, I kind of want to jump to that right away. Let's get into Dementis and let's get into Chris Hemsworth, Anya Taylor-Joy, the cast and characters that we saw in this movie. Let's start with Dementis. What did you guys feel about this character and obviously Chris Hemsworth's performance as him?
Yeah, he was cool. I mean, he had a great performance. I thought he was crazy. I love the part when he started just having a seizure, like mid punch, and then like got back up and still started monologuing. I'm like, Jesus, this is weird, but it was crazy. And then yeah, I liked his whole teddy bear thing. Anytime he was just tested as a leader, he always got like really emotional and fragile. And I thought it was some great characterization. I think his performance was great. I think the character to me is a little one dimensional. Like, he really doesn't go anywhere outside of the whole like, oh, I'm evil and I have a tragic backstory kind of lane. He doesn't really like, he's like a himbo. He's like the himbo of like dictators, essentially. He's so dumb that he just accidentally ends up in the right place at the right time, but then it still ends up blowing up in his face. Like, they're doing riots inside of the gas town and stuff. So it's just like, yeah, it's just like, he's kind of like an archetype and he's playing that archetype really, really well. But yeah, it is like just a type. I feel like everybody in the movie is kind of a little bit of a type per se.
What'd you think, Sabrina?
His performance stands out to me so much. I know I mentioned that at the beginning, but I think it's very like theatrical, and I definitely think it elevates the character because, like RB3 said, there's not so much to dive into. There are facets of him that we get to see throughout the film, but it really does hinge on his performance. So I think I enjoyed it with what Chris Hemsworth brought to the table, and I think it's the theatricality of all of these characters, like how just outlandish, ridiculous, and energetic they all are. I think that's because I'm a 2 hour and 30-minute movie runtime like hater, unless I don't feel it when I'm watching it, which in this case I didn't. And I'm usually somebody that absolutely does. But yeah, I think the energy that he brought to the role, what a lot of the people did, just makes it fly by for me personally.
Yeah, I was kind of blown away by it because I heard someone say, and obviously no hate to this person, even though I'm not even going to name him, that he's just playing Thor, which I disagree with completely. I don't see Thor anywhere in this performance. And I know a lot of people also said that the nose was distracting, which I get. That I understand. I can totally see that. But to me, it's a fascinating conundrum as to what makes a leader inside this dark world, because he's definitely the leader. Everyone kind of looks to him. Like, the first few guys we meet who have taken Furiosa keep talking about, like, I'll take him to Dementis. I'll take him to... Like, they really want to impress this guy as the leader. But the fact that he is incompetent, like you said, RB3, and he is kind of dumb, and he doesn't know what to do with actual power. Once he has Gastown, he runs it to the ground, is what they say. So he kind of hoards all the resources to himself and doesn't know how to distribute it to the people property, even though that's what Immortan Joe does as well, because we see that in Mad Max, how he hoards all the water to himself and to his people, and yet he's able to control it a little bit more through his own legend because people worship him as a god. And with Dementis, not quite. But I just felt like, how did this guy get so far in this world? And I just kept saying to myself, he's a good speaker. Like, he's good at talking. That's his superpower, is talking. Like, I've never understood the term yapper. I just don't get it. But until I met Dementis, I was like, that's a yapper right there. Like, he just gets his way with people and with his crowd. The way he's able to work a crowd, his first speech to Immortan Joe, I was like, I'd buy that speech. He's like, I will rescue you people from the depths of your despair. Join me. And I was like, all right, I join him. Why not? He's a good speaker, man.
The War Boys were loyal. You know,
The War Boys, you can't do that. But other people, like, around him, I'd buy it. And I just find that to be so fascinating. The fact that he can get by with just being a good talker was a really cool way to talk about this kind of dark leader that he is. I want to jump to any other standouts you guys have, because I know it's a major cast and there's other people besides Anya and Chris. Any other standouts for you guys? Sabrina?
Yes, I can't remember his name, but he was in like the Souvenir movies. He's the one that trains her.
Yeah,
Tom Burke.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, he was absolutely incredible. I really liked his character. I know, was it Yahya Abdul-Mateen was supposed to be in this role?
Yeah.
I would have liked to see that, but at least he made me forget about the fact that Yahya Abdul-Mateen was supposed to be that character. Yeah.
RB3, any standouts?
Yeah, he was definitely a standout too. I'll definitely put him as a heavy standout for sure. I even saw the guy who created Metal Gear Solid. He's a big movie guy. Hideo
I love that guy.
Hideo Kojima.
Yeah, I love him.
He said he should play Snape. I'm like, oh, that's actually a really good casting idea. Because he was also Mank. He was Orson Welles in Mank, if I'm not mistaken, too, right?
I know.
Yeah, or something like that.
You're the only person that remembers Mank in this day.
I remember Mank, but damn.
Didn't we all go to the drive-in to see that?
We did.
Yeah.
Oh, good times, pandemic. But yeah, no, he was good.
He's
and then
good.
also the young lady who played the mother, Furiosa.
Yeah.
She was really
I believe
cool.
her name is it Charlie Fraser?
I believe
Charlie Fraser, I believe is her name. She's great. She stood out. That's the one that stood out to me quite a bit for sure. She definitely was a captivating presence on screen. And the way she was taking these dudes out one by one in a very slow, deliberate manner was very cool. So I really appreciated her character. Just knocked the girl out. I kept thinking about this when I was home. After watching the movie, I was like, you didn't have to kill the woman, but if you knocked her out, you know what I'm saying? The very first scene?
Oh, yeah. No, definitely. I was thinking the exact
You could have
same
gone
thing.
away. You could have driven like 30
Yes.
miles and she'd been knocked out for like an hour. I was like, you can get by like a good 30 miles in an hour. Go the
Yeah.
other way. You don't have to kill her. But I don't know. That's a side note for me. So
Yeah, and also Elsa Pataki, Chris Hemsworth's wife.
Yeah.
She played.
I
the
laughed when I
character
saw
that
her.
had the one. Face,
Yeah.
That girl in Dementis's group. That was just crazy, like absolutely insane. So they really just like overall had a great cast. Furiosa's mother as well, huge standout. I know she was in that film Anyone But You, and this is an entirely different role, and I didn't even recognize her at all until afterwards when I was looking her up to see if I had seen her in anything before.
do you guys have a favorite moment or scene in the movie?
Gosh, I do think again, Tom Burke's character and Furiosa when they do try to get their way into Gastown. And I think that parallel of, you know, Furiosa's mother in the beginning saying, like, continue going, like, if I'm not here, just, like, keep going. But then she comes back for them every single time. And I think that really just shows her strength as a character. And again, her perseverance, even in the face of, I can get away from this chaos, but I'm not going to lose the people that I love in the process.
RB3?
For one, I love the scene with Homeboy riding the horse, the motorcycles like their chariots, Chris Hemsworth, having homie like run around in circles, like or have him tied up to the car and running him around as Furiosa watch right before she got her arm ripped off. I'm like, dang, this is hardcore, this is tough, and the dogs are coming in. And then, of course, the action. I think the action is really what like everybody like comes out of this movie thinking about and talking about. And I think anytime it was like the massive, car explosion, like that one that again that I mentioned that happened in the middle, that was like the aerial mixed in with all that stuff. Like I think that one is definitely the most impressive sequence in the film. But there's a bunch of great sequences though. Even when like they shoot Furiosa's mom's like motorcycle and there's like the explosion behind her and it looks like she's like straight coming from fire.
On fire.
Yeah, that was dope.
Really cool moments. Yeah, and the same thing kind of happens with Anya Taylor-Joy when there's that gate and she's on the other side of it and all the fire shoots out from behind her. Those sequences are so gorgeous, and I know you guys are VFX guys. You really notice that kind of stuff, so I wanted to ask about the CGI in this film and what you guys thought about it.
Go ahead, RB3.
Oh, I mean, it's cheesy. It's definitely like cheesy, but it's definitely one of those kind of movies. Like the visual effects in Fury Road were also mad cheesy too. Like I always still think about that shot of like the steering wheel just I saw it in 3D Fury Road. You know what I mean?
Oh, I love that shot.
When the steering wheel just comes directly to the camera and it just launches right to your face in 3D and comes back. It's so cheesy and it looks so fake, but it's part of the aesthetic. So I'm honestly not mad at it when it's part of the aesthetic. And I think the parts where it's supposed to look good, like I know they use CGI to like blend the faces of the young Furiosa and the old Furiosa. They use like AI technology to like blend the faces together. I actually thought that was pretty good too. Like I didn't even notice that until I read about that afterwards.
Yeah, it's interesting because I believe the intentionality behind it and the fact that there is so much more substance that is there. And I agree with a lot of people who have been saying that there's an over tendency, and I've said this before, RB3, I remember saying it to you, there's an over tendency to take actual visual stunt performers who are in camera and to amplify them and color them with like CG like stuff. I don't know, they just add stuff around them to make it look cooler, and I just feel like sometimes it becomes too much on screen and too much that your eye is trying to digest. But in this movie, it's very purposeful. And I feel that intentionality behind, like you said, RB3, the cheesy CG, because it feels like there's an actual story to it. And it feels like there's an actual visual language. That's the word I'm trying to get. Visual language to it, where this world has that kind of weird factor, that kind of like, oh, that feels out of place, but it kind of feels right because it's in the Mad Max world, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of like, there's an elevation of quality overall in this movie that I feel that like I don't get with a lot of other blockbusters, and I feel like that's obviously 90% George Miller. The rest of it is probably obviously the budget because it's a big budget movie, but I feel like I needed that versus like, no hate, but every Marvel movie I've seen in the past 5 years has not given me that. So I feel like this is an IP film that has a lot of intention inside its world building, even with the CG that doesn't look great. So
yeah, it didn't take me out at all. I really liked it, but I mean, a lot of the times I don't wear my glasses to see a movie. That's on me. But I did wear my glasses for this one, and I thought it worked really well with the story too. But I saw people complaining about it on Twitter, of course.
Yeah, people always complain, but I think to me, I know a lot of people would probably enjoy the side of the story, but it's like it felt so world buildy. Like it felt like we have to establish like, oh, there's this much backstory behind like this town and this this like bullet town and like all this stuff, and it's like the War Boys. Oh, we even homages to like the Thunderdome, the third one with Tina Turner, and it's just kind of like, yo, I feel like this movie is like very. It almost feels like franchisey in that way. You know what I mean? It's almost like there's so many callbacks to a franchise that I didn't really care about. And I honestly cared just more about Furiosa just in general. And I feel like, the other Mad Max movies is really just like Mad Max going into like one thing and then dealing with that situation. This one is like 4 or 5 different things, but oh, by the way, all these 4 or 5 different things connect to other movies that if you really care about this franchise, you're going to be into. But if you don't, like, you kind of have to learn about it on the spot. But we're not going to teach you about it through dialogue. You're just going to have to like see it and learn it. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm working too hard for a movie I just kind of want to just have fun with. But again, I'm a hater. You know what I mean? I could go back and rewatch this movie and think totally differently. But for right now, I just wanted something a little bit more succinct and a little bit quicker and more fast paced. And this one was a little bit slower than I would have.
I agree that coming out of Mad Max, it's definitely a hard left, right? Where you feel the pacing of Mad Max and it's just like dun 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 dun, dun. Like you're going, you're going, you're going, you're going, you're going, and you don't really stop to breathe for maybe just one scene.
Yeah.
And then going from that to this, where it is very like James Cameron Avatar, like slowing down to talk about the life and the family and the world, and it feels very much like a super slow pace, and you have to kind of brace yourself for it. So I totally understand that. I felt it in the movie, and I know you didn't, Sabrina, but I definitely felt like one or two scenes where I was like, ooh, let's go, man. Like yeah, let's push it. This is definitely lagging right now. And I think it was the transition between little Furiosa to older Furiosa, where I was just kind of like, all right, let's get there. Because I did feel like it was kind of slowing down. I don't agree that it was the intro. I love the intro. I love that scene. To me, like, don't cut any of that. But there, that little mid portion right before Stowaway, which is the scene that we've been mentioning, which is the war rig scene with the kites and stuff.
Yeah.
Right before that, I felt like you could speed it up a little bit. So I definitely felt the pacing slowing down, but it didn't take me out of the movie whatsoever. I was still very much invested inside this story. Let's get to really quickly how the movie ended and the conclusion of Furiosa, because I feel like this is a hot topic for a lot of people. And then we'll quickly, and I know RB3 is going to kill me, talk about the box office. But let's talk about that ending. What did you think about the conclusion of this movie, Sabrina?
I really enjoyed it. I love that it was just so like it this revenge story built up to this grand moment, which I think that we expect a lot of the times in films like this. And it almost feels like Furiosa was disappointed in how lackluster it was too, to be honest. And it was just like, oh, I've had this rage. I've had these feelings for so long and I've been waiting for this moment. I'm like, he's mine whenever you do see him. And then once we got to the point, someone like Dementis is so messed up that it's not even satisfying to get that revenge on him, because he's like, oh, I have a high pain tolerance. He's like, I'll just turn my back. Like, it's great to know, like, or you can't see when it's coming. So I really, really enjoyed that. I kind of love how abrupt it was almost. It was like full stop. I think Furiosa as a character also learns a lot about herself, rage, and revenge in this world. So it really worked for me.
RB3, what'd you think?
Yeah, I chalked the ending up to one of those weird artsy fartsy Cannes Film Festival kind of endings that is just like, yeah, it's cool, but maybe it's just not for me. And it very much brings me back to, I don't know if y'all saw George Miller's movie right before this one, 3,000 Years of Longing with Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton. Weird movie, weird, and it takes swings, and it's very much trying to be like a fairy book kind of like mythology, like fable kind of situation. And I feel like that's where Furiosa was trying to be more. I feel like Mad Max Fury Road was just a straight up action movie. And I feel like, it was good. It was, to me, one of the greatest action movies ever, point blank period. And I think George Miller was like, okay, I don't want to exactly make just an action movie this time. I want to make an action movie, but I also want to make a storybook kind of fable with like a romantic kind of ending. And I think that's what he was kind of going for. And kudos to people who love it or don't, but I just didn't, that's very the artsy fartsy kind of vibe that leaves me with.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like the topic of proper revenge, or the topic of like a satisfying conclusion to a revenge movie, is kind of complex, because you want to fill your bloodthirstiness, if that makes sense, but you also want to have a theme or a message that feels a little bit more unique. And I think that's what George Miller was going for. And I understand the hesitancy to accept it, because I feel like a lot of people weren't happy with it because of the fact that it almost feels like Dementis got that moment in the sense of like, he got to be like, yo, I'm gonna say my speech, and he gives this great speech about like revenge and hate and how you're never satisfied and how you're basically becoming me anyways. And it was all kind of true, and you could see it in Furiosa's face, where she felt like damn, he's got me, like I am kind of a hateful person right now. But at the same time, her whole theme in Mad Max is redemption, where she's trying to save the wives, and she's trying to save specifically these women. And I guess the bearing of the fruit is supposed to symbolize that kind of rebirth inside her life and making herself a new home to these women, and to these people that need her help, and she can use that kind of power that she gained from the wasteland to protect these women, which is a very interesting perspective. But I also heard that this was a topic of just debate within the cast itself. I heard that Anya was very much wanted a specific ending. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but she wanted to cut out Dementis's tongue and like keep it as, and she wanted that to be his like revenge. Like she cuts out his tongue and she keeps his tongue, and it's some dramatic scene where she's cutting out his tongue or something. And George Miller shot that, but he didn't include that as the ending. And he told her that it was not going to be the ending. He's like, this is not my ending, but I'm going to give it to you anyway, because she wanted it so bad. But it was a very interesting way to send off this character, because I know it has so many different themes about feminism and womanhood and what that entails inside this universe, right? Where she is kind of the only woman who is an imperator and this war-rigged driver and this powerful figure and this legend, right? That's why people tolerate her being a woman inside this world, because she is a legend. No one cares because she is hanging out with Praetorian Jack and doing this cool shit. So it's I can go on for hours about how it's very much like an interesting, intricate, complicated way to end a movie, but I dug it. It's definitely not perfect. I kind of agree with you, RB3. It's not the most perfect ending, but I definitely enjoyed it.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned the ending, because I did have 3 more notes that I wanted to bring up just regarding Furiosa. Note number 1, if you love this ending, you would love the ending to Spike Lee's 25th Hour. That's also another movie with multiple ending interpretations, and I think that one does it in a very classy way as well. If you loved Chris Hemsworth's performance as a villain, you should also love Jason Momoa's performance in Furious X, or Fast X, I'm sorry. Fast X, because they are playing the exact same kind of character, and I love it. Go back and watch Fast X, people. Jason Momoa is amazing. Same level as Chris Hemsworth in this. And then thirdly, the wig in the tree was a beautiful imagery. Also, the whole idea for cutting her hair and then like...
Leaving the hair on top?
Leaving the hair on top. Yeah. So then, because they kept using her hair to like pull it and like pull her hair, like, you know, all those kind of things. So then like the fact that she like ends up reclaiming that, and that's like a image that is recurring. I thought that was dope.
Yeah. Going back to what you said, if we're going to recommend movies, I guess I have to rewatch like Fast X, because I did enjoy Jason Momoa in that, but I think Chris Hemsworth did better in this one. But also Bad Times at the El Royale, actually. That completely reminded me. Chris Hemsworth in that film, he plays a cult leader, and it is very theatrical, very energetic like this one. So I also recommend that one.
All right, let's do it really quickly. The box office. This movie made $32 million over the weekend. It was Memorial Day weekend, which is supposed to be a major weekend. Mad Max Fury Road made $45 million. And that was a disappointment when that happened as well.
Number 2.
So this is 2 disappointments in a row. What is going on, RB3, with the box office in general and just Furiosa?
Well, even though Mad Max Fury Road even though $45 million was a little bit of a disappointing opening weekend, it still made like almost nearly $400 million worldwide, 380. So then like it still ended up making its budget back, and then plus a little bit more. So it still ended up being profitable, and you know, it had a great life on home video and through streaming and stuff like that. You know, only became more popular. So I could kind of see the calculation, but I also think prequels that star a younger actor, you know, playing the character, it's just hard to really sell people on that. You know, we saw that with Solo. We saw that with a bunch of other like kind of, you know, like the Star Wars prequels were really successful, but we never really saw Darth Vader's face. We never saw Anakin Skywalker's face. So like we're kind of getting that new identity to it right then and there. But then, you know, the Hobbit films kind of disappointed in comparison to the Lord of the Rings films. And we see it over and over again. I don't really think prequels are really the most exciting place for people, you know, to go.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sabrina?
Yeah, I agree. I also think Mad Max as a whole is a franchise that not everybody in the average movie-going audience, especially I would say even like around our age, if I asked any of my friends that go to see movies here and there, I don't think they would really know what it is, or at least even be like, I don't know, wanting to seek it out. So I think that for this one in particular, I think it'll have legs from like word of mouth. I think there's enough positivity out there, even though not everybody loves this film, that maybe this will encourage more people to check it out if they don't know Mad Max if they haven't been a fan of the franchise. I think this one is so interesting too because again, this isn't just the easy little popcorn action movie that we kind of expect a summer blockbuster to be. This definitely has a lot more depth to it and a lot that you have to be on board for if you're gonna enjoy this one. And again, 2 hours and 30 minutes too. A lot of the times, like when my friends want to go check out a film, they do see that runtime when they get their tickets, and that could turn some people off, maybe, especially in the summertime. Maybe you don't want to sit in a theater for 2.5 hours watching a film from a franchise that you don't know or are not familiar with this character. So I'm hoping that at the end, like RB3 said about Mad Max Fury Road, that it can start to accumulate its money back. Because I feel like we should get more films like this, not just having like a female protagonist, but just very interesting ideas. You know, when we talk about Dementis's character, and we're all saying like he's kind of like a fool that is just able to convince people for half a second that he could be a good leader, and that's how he has skated by. I think that's also a really good reflection of what we have around us in present day, in past, present, and unfortunately the future. So I really like that about it, and hopefully it'll get its money back.
Yeah, I was gonna say one more thing too. I think the Mad Max demographic, like you were alluding to, Sabrina, is so narrow. I think it really only appeals, you know, just to keep it blunt, it's like white dudes. Like white dudes of a certain age, like really are gonna love Mad Max. Because I talked to my brothers the other day, like before Furiosa came out, they're like, "Oh, no movies are coming out." I'm like, "Yo, Furiosa's next week." They're like, "What? Furiosa? Ain't nobody trying to see that." And then I was like, begging Jason, my girlfriend, like, "Yo, we getting ready to see Furiosa, right?" And she did not care. Like, she did not care about no Mad Max. She did not care at all. So it's like, yeah, people just don't. Yeah, if you're not a very specific Mad Max fan already, and now you're getting a prequel that's like exploring lore and characters that you already kind of have to be involved with anyway, it's a harder sell, you know.
I'm echoing everything you guys are saying, but it's also like the fact that this world is so dark and demented and rated R, and not really like, I don't know, it's not like a Avengers or like a fun Marvel movie, a PG-13 take your family to the movies kind of movie. It's much more of a pretty twisted, extremely twisted, dark, depressing, nihilistic universe that the movie is presenting. And I feel like people don't want to see that right now. Like a lot of people just don't really have that in their heart to see that right now, and I really do feel like that's a lot to do with it. And obviously this is it kind of takes a step back in looking at box office as a whole, where we can look at what is happening with box office as a whole, where there is a huge shift and change where movies just aren't making that much money anymore. And I think people have to realize that we're not living in 2018 anymore, or 2017, or whatever year you want to say before COVID. After the pandemic, just everything changed. The theaters changed, and the way people watch movies changed. So I do feel like that has a lot to do with it. And also the fact that this universe isn't very appealing unless you are really into dark metal horror type stuff, like you said, RB3, which is not for everyone. So yeah, I do feel like that's a big deal.
I literally saw a family walk out during my screening. Right when Anya,
why are they there?
When arm went off like a young child, and the parents were like walking out. Like,
why is a young child there?
Right.
I'm sorry.
Wait to the arm scene?
Yeah. I'm not tolerating that. I'm not like, if you take your kid to see this movie, that's on you. That's not on the movie. I'm sorry. Watch the trailer. Like, if you watch this trailer and you say, "I'm taking my kid to see that," that's a parent problem. I'm sorry. Because this movie is clearly telling you that this movie is going to show you freaking flying heads and decapitated bodies and like limbs falling off. Like, don't take your damn kids to see this movie. Come on, y'all.
Maybe they couldn't find a babysitter. They were like, "Here, like, have your little Nintendo Switch sit in the corner. Don't pay attention to the movie." Then after a certain point, they're like, "Nah, I'm just." I agree 100% that, like, I know, because there have been those stories lately of some like films where people are taking their kids to see, like, even kind of like a superhero action film, expecting it to be along like the Marvel type of energy, and it's just not. So yeah, look into these. I think there's some kids movie out there right now.
Garfield.
Yeah, there you go.
Garfield then. Yeah.
I think it's the parents. The parents really want to see it, and they're just like, "Can he see it?" I don't think so, but whatever. And they don't really care about scarring them for life. I want to really quickly before we close, because we're closing right now, say that for such a dark and twisted movie, I do feel like it does bring a lot of hope. In its own weird way, the character Furiosa does. And I also want to give a shout out to Praetorian, and I know you guys talked about him, because I do feel like that character is supposed to also signify that there is hope inside this twisted world, where out of all these evil men, and every single one of them are evil or brainwashed men, because that's what the war boys are, there is one guy who not just survives in this world, but takes it upon himself to show at least a little bit of kindness. And I feel like that went a long way to inspire Furiosa and to keep her going, because maybe that character was just the spark that she needed to save the wives. So that's what I took away from it. Either way, those were our thoughts on Furiosa. Let us know what you guys thought in the comments down below. You can follow me at Squad Leader Ace. Sabrina.
You can follow me on Twitter and TikTok at Sabrina on Film, and then Instagram at Sabrina.onfilm.
RB3.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Director RB3.
And obviously follow us right here at First Cut. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And for the First Cut crew, we're going to be peacing out. So peace.
It's either me or you. It's either me or you. You do the math, only one can remain.